So last week we told you that Brussels is taking on Russian state-controlled gas company Gazprom. The European Commission says Gazprom is abusing its power in Eastern and Central Europe, charges which the company denies. Moscow believes the allegations are politically motivated. Not surprising, since Gazprom is seen as a foreign policy tool for the Kremlin. But the Commission has also opened up another front against tech giant Google. It doesn't like the way Google displays search results, favouring its own products and services above those of its rivals. The European Union has pedigree. It's taken on the likes of Microsoft, fining the software giant more than 1.6 billion euros. Well, both cases have been brought by the European Union's new competition chief, Margaret Vestager. And I'm delighted to say she's joining us now from Brussels. Thank you for being with us. Now, the United States seems to have a very poor record on tackling monopoly behaviour. Is that the reason why the European Commission has to step in?
No, not at all. The US and the EU jurisdictions are, of course, completely different. They do their job and we do ours when it concerns the EU markets. And if we find facts and evidence to support misuse of a dominant position, then, of course, we address that to the company.
Well, let's give you one example. Intel was only fined $6 million by US authorities in one case, essentially a slap on the wrist, some would say. But the EU fined Intel 1.4 billion euros for its monopolistic behaviour in the chip market.
Well, I think you'd find that there is a number of differences. We work very closely with the US authorities on concrete cases, for instance, merger control. But of course, it sometimes boils down to the fact that there is a different history, there is a different way of looking at the administrative system and level of fines. And of course, in Europe, we have to justify to our voters, to our legislator, that we do what is expected and by the law in a European jurisdiction, no matter how the American system works.
Let's talk about Gazprom. You've accused it of abusing its market power in Eastern Europe. Are your decisions ever political? Do you think Gazprom acts as a foreign policy tool for Moscow?
Well, the decisions when it concerns enforcement of competition law cannot be political, because our decisions, our accusations, our cases, they may have to stand up in court. And court will rely on facts, interpretation of facts, evidence, not on political opinions or what may have been convenient in some or another political situation. And therefore, it would be extremely critical if law enforcement was ever used as a political tool.
So what's your case against Google and Gazprom?
Well, the two cases have very little in common, but they have one thing in common, which is the fact that we look at very dominant companies, strong, successful companies, and that is completely all right. Problem is if that strength is being misused, either to charge higher prices or to promote one's own services in neighboring markets or to keep others out. And those are the issues that we have with Gazprom and Google. And I guess the only other thing they have in common is that their name begins with a G.
Are you protecting EU companies? There's no European equivalent of Amazon, Google or Facebook.
Well, there is at least two things which are important. One thing is to keep the market open so that new and innovative companies can thrive and the competition is fair. And the second thing which we are working on is to create a capital market which to a larger degree can support also European businesses when they're about to take off and grow. Because that is for Europeans a bad comparison with the US, where they have a much more vibrant capital market and a much more integrated ecosystem when it comes to innovation, capital founding, and then growth. So yes, there are things we can do, but this has to do with using the market, enabling fair competition, enabling businesses to grow, not by protecting our market from other businesses.
And do you think the EU should be going after the banking sector? I mean, up to now, they've paid more than $200 billion in fines, yet their behavior has not changed. Are these banks truly too big to be broken up?
Well, you know, of course, that we have passed very strong legislation in Europe during the crisis year in order to regulate the financial sector much tighter, maybe making it slightly more boring to be a banker, but to make sure that looking forward we will have a much more healthy, much more modest banking sector. We will, of course, investigate if we find that there is evidence, if we have suspicions of foul play, but we don't go after the sector as such. Banking and financing of businesses is, of course, a very crucial task to be managed in a growing economy.
Margaret Vestager, EU Competition Chief, thanks very much for joining us on Counting the Cost.